Hi, welcome to Drunken Yoda Unplugged. So, those of you who remember me as Rationalist Yoda, I kind of go by Drunken Yoda now. And we moved over and I got with a group of guys and we started up lastmovieoutpost.com. And we do have a channel, Last Movie Outpost, and where we talk about movies and streaming and that sort of thing. Unfortunately, a lot of politics bleeds into that, and that's been kind of some of our listeners and some of our readers and everything are kind of put off by a little bit of that. That's why they go to Last Movie Outpost and they don't really like that. So we've set up this channel, or I've kind of revived this channel, I guess you'd say, resurrected it from the ashes to begin talking about more political things that are political in nature. Of course, with everything being political in entertainment these days, sometimes there is some crossover, but sometimes there's just straight political stuff that we want to talk about. So from that channel, I bring with me not George Lucas. How are you doing, George?
Not too bad. Nice to be here.
I'm glad to have you here. And I will bring various people from that channel and maybe some people that are not part of Last Movie Outpost as time goes on. I'm a big follower of Tim Pool, the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, used to be Sargon of Akkad, and of course the Daily Wire and various other people who do YouTube channels that talk about current events, political things in nature, and we wanted to keep it separate, so this seemed like a good place to start doing that. So with the inaugural broadcast, we are going to talk about Matt Walsh's What is a Woman documentary, which kind of has some crossover appeal because it is a movie, a piece of entertainment, but a documentary. George, you said you watched this morning. I also watched this morning.
Yeah, I mean, funnily enough, I'm not massively political and I usually don't like talking about these things, but like you say, this is one of those crossovers where you can't help but talk about the message that's coming across, particularly politically, and it was a fascinating documentary.
It was, and I think that's what's happened on our side, on the Last Movie Outpost side, is that so much of today's entertainment, and we've talked about it with Star Wars, Star Trek, some of the big IPs, even Marvel and that sort of thing, but there's a lot of other shows and even more independent or brand new entertainment that has the message in it. I know that people are really up in arms over what's probably going to happen to the Lord of the Rings and that sort of thing. And so sometimes we just can't help but talk about it because it's being thrust upon us. It's a part of that piece of entertainment. This, however, was just a straight documentary that is obvious. We say political. I mean, to me, politics is like you're running for office and you're talking about different issues. This is more cultural, I think. Yeah. And the premise of it is that Matt Walsh is he's a speaker over at the Daily Wire. He works with Ben Shapiro and some of these other guys over there. And he has had many discussions about the whole transgender movement that's moving along right now. I am against the transgender movement. I am not against people, living their best lives and things like that. Where the disagreement comes in is whether or not hacking off bits of yourself and taking these puberty blockers and doing these things to children in an effort to become trendy, more mainstream, is causing a lot more harm than good.
I mean, that's the whole thing that I got from this, that there are obviously people, I forget what the actual condition they call it now.
Gender dysphoria.
Dysmorphia? Yeah.
Dysphoria.
I completely understand how there are people that have obviously got this condition and have to live with it. I imagine it's a very few people in the world. There was the one lady on there who has been through it because it was obviously a genuine thing that she had. What it seems to show is like you say with the whole thing with culture, is particularly social media just seems to try and normalize this. And so it seems now that maybe, say, I don't know, 10, 20 years ago, you may have maybe found, say, like a dozen people in America that have got a genuine condition like this, whereas apparently now in America, there's, 1.4 million people that have got this, and it just seems to be a bandwagon. No, that's what I mean, is it just seems to be a bandwagon that people are jumping on and sort of saying, oh, it's perfectly all right to be trans and everything else and hack yourself to bits and whatnot, and everybody should do it. And it's kind of, really? Should they? What, just to fit in? You know, some people genuinely do have it and are genuinely struggling, but you just seem to be saying it's perfectly all right to do this, even to, you know, people as young as 16 or 18-year-old people.
Yeah, I was really struck by a transgendered man, biological female became a man named Scott. I can't remember what the last name was. He's probably well into his 50s, and I give him the courtesy of the pronouns because clearly he put a lot of effort into it. I would not know that this was a woman. And she is, or he has, see, I already screwed it up. He has started up a foundation that basically is to stop kids from doing this. And he shows some of the surgery scars and some of the things that's happened to him, how many infections he has constantly.
Yeah.
And listening to this person talk it was heartbreaking.
It was upsetting. I was genuinely upset and crying at some of the stuff he was saying that he's been through, because he, again, like you say, he was somebody who has genuinely been through this and genuinely had a problem, but now sees it that people are just quite happy to just, you know, oh, my child at 10-year-old, they're in the wrong gender and everything else. And that's the kind of thing that he is stopping. He is making sure that the right people get the right treatment, but the wrong people stopped from basically child abuse.
I was thinking along the lines of some of the horrific things that groups of people have done to other groups of people. Of course, you know, we all know about the Holocaust. I'm not trying to compare it to that. But there's been plenty of things where people have oppressed other people and disfigured them, or we can talk about the Tuskegee experiments. There's all kinds of things like that in history where clearly people are being physically abused, hurt, killed, whatever. I feel like what is happening here is akin to some of that, except the real hideousness of it is that they've actually convinced these people to walk themselves into the wood chipper with a big smile on their face. You know, it's because they say it's like 40% of these people post surgery kill themselves.
Yeah. And again, what you think of how parents, I mean, I'm not a father myself, but I know you are. And, you know, having children, I imagine, is one of the most precious things that you could ever do. It was a conscious decision that me and my wife were not going to have them, and we didn't have them. But then to have a child and it gets to reach to a point where, you know, it picks up a doll, for example, and wants to play with that doll, and then you think to yourself, oh my goodness, it's in the wrong body. I need to now make sure that this little boy that I've had is identified as a girl, you know, over something like that. Because to me, in its simplest form, that's what this feels like is happening. You know, that people are just literally, there was a very good point where the doctor says that some boys play with dolls and some girls play with cars, and it's kind of, that's perfectly okay. That doesn't mean you have to then start hacking them to pieces and giving them chemicals and drugs and to make them think that is, you know, it's perfectly normal for children to do that. And ultimately, again, this is something that came across, I mean, so many times, that ultimately they sort of say that the doctor has been misgendering children when they're born. So basically, if they've got a penis, they've been gendering them a boy, and if they've got a vagina, they've been vagina, which is a system which has been working pretty well for, you know, the last few thousand years. But now, I'm just going to say in the Western world as well, because we can come to that later, but I mean, in the Western world, it seems that even gendering a child as soon as it's born is against that child's constitutional rights.
So I was listening listening to that. I was thinking about a lot of the things that I listened to, or a lot of the videos, especially from the right, are all about owning the libs, you know. Not all of them, but there's a lot of that, and vice versa. It's about, you know, one-upping and trying to, you know, prove them wrong, and you could be right, and then, you know. Yeah. And I think that's a problem on the right side of the aisle. Whatever, I'm using that as shorthand because honestly, I don't know what those terms mean anymore. They're there was a time where I stuck up for corporations when those corporations were just simply making products and people were treating them like ridiculous. I didn't like it when they had tax loopholes and things like that. But now corporations have become these weird cathedrals, and they're using, but it's all bullshit, so they can make money or try not to get bad press, because the press is full of these weird monks that, believe in this bizarre new religion, as I look at it. So you've got that where people are taking advantage of this, and they're all a part of this weird, bizarre cult, and they just keep moving on to the next thing. But then you have the rank and file people. And I'm looking at Western society, and there's never been a time in human history where all of our needs are pretty much, we don't have any real problems. I don't have to worry about getting eaten by wolves or a neighboring tribe coming in here and stabbing me and
or even going hungry.
Hungry.
The basics of fine,
I have a problem, not eating, getting fat.
You don't have to go and hunter and gather and everything else. That's
the issues that so much entertainment at our fingertips and things like that. So we're as a and this has only been going on for the last 100 years or so, right? In all of human history, really, you could say it's only been, you could even say after World War II, really.
The internet's only been around for what, 40 odd years or so, and mobile phones are the same. So, and the whole social media thing in the last, 10, 15 years, it's gone along and then suddenly just shot straight up.
So now we have, and on top of that, and again, I'm not a religious guy by any stretch of the imagination, but churches have been largely replaced or supplanted in a lot of ways. I'm not saying that there isn't a lot of people that still go to church, but nature abhors a vacuum. So there's going to be some religion that takes it up.
I work at a local hardware store, and I can easily tell you more people come through our doors on a Sunday than would go through a church.
Yeah. So what churches, the good ones, because I do believe in the Judeo-Christian ethic in general. And I think that people no longer have meaning in their lives. They have everything satiated, so they're struggling with meaning. And especially these, you have children raising children in a lot of ways. We have people that have a lot of emotional problems and don't have meaning, and then they're trying to raise their kids, and the way they find meaning is to say, we're going to go with the latest trendy thing, which is there's two. Well, boy, I got so many thoughts here running. How I'm looking at how I'm seeing these things, but there is a component to human nature that says either the things that happen to me are in my control and are my fault or are changeable. Not to say, like, if a tornado comes through your house, that couldn't happen. But a person who thinks like that has said, I'm going to make sure I buy housing insurance. I'm going to make sure I do the things, because you never know when that can happen. It's still something I can control in my own way. And then there's people who say that the world just happens to them. Yeah. And I think the ultimate expression of that is saying, I was assigned a gender at birth. Instead of just observing the world as it is. The world is just happening to you, and you have no control over anything. And if you really feel that out of control about everything, this kind of stuff can be very enticing.
Completely and utterly agree with you. That, like you say, there are certain things in your life that you can control. You know what you're going to be eating for the next few days. You know what you're going to be wearing and that kind of stuff. Whereas, like you say, there are some things which are out of our control. But this kind of, if you overthink them, like I say, we had a massive thunderstorm last night, and the house shook at one point. It was horrendous. At any moment, lightning could strike and kill you. But if you are going to walk around literally terrified of that, what quality of life are you going to have?
Not much.
No. And so you can prepare for the best at some point, but if it's coming down then to what kind of person, if you're worrying about what kind of gender you are in a world which is in a reality where we can't take, no matter what you say, there is a basic truth. I think Matt kept saying that in the documentary. There is a basic truth that there are two genders, there are two sexes, there is a male and there is a female, and now and then biology gets it wrong and they need to change. But just people that are just doing it just for the sake of doing it, what is going on in their lives that makes them feel so that way that they have to, like you say, hack themselves to pieces ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, when they showed all the TikToks of people just screaming, they, them, why is it so hard to save my product? And the only thing I kept hearing is, I am a person, I am relevant in this world. Why doesn't anybody? I am so alone, and nobody cares. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
And this is just their outlet for it because they've fallen under the sway of. I think the one doctor lady said it best. It's like, if you can make $30,000 every time you hack off a kid's penis or their boobs, and you can use a lot of that money to donate to politicians, that's the that I'm saying.
The point I liked, and I'm not just saying this, but there was a British guy, but I like the fact that he said that when you grew up in your village or town or city, wherever you grew up with a bunch of kids. And I grew up in a sort of fairly smallish area of a city. But like I say, there was a group of friends. You knew where everybody was because their bikes were parked outside somebody's house. And it was like, right, yes. But we live in a world now where that kind of is not happening because it's done on a global scale. And like you say, that, you know, your small group of friends, you know, if one of them got a football shirt, you all had to get a football shirt kind of thing. And that kind of thing would go on. Whereas nowadays, there is so much bombardment from social media for kind of everything. I mean, I can't even imagine what the kids have to go through because they're not just impressing their group of friends who they physically know, but they're also trying to impress a group of friends of 1,000 fake followers on Facebook who are all their friend and then telling them what to do as well.
I had about 600 people in my graduating high school class, and you take that times 4 because high school is at that time was 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. So 2,400 people in the school. And then, of course, as you're moving through, you lose 600, you gain 600, so you can almost double that. 5,000 people in my school at any one time, or not, across a 4-year window, I should say. And, you know maybe 10% of them, if that.
Yeah.
And all of those people, of those people, maybe another 10%, so 50 or so of those people that maybe you're trying to impress or you think are cool or whatever, and they'll buy an Ocean Pacific shirt, so you got to buy an Ocean Pacific shirt or whatever.
I remember those shirts.
Yeah, yeah, child of the 80s. But now you're amplifying that to so many orders of magnitude because of social media. I can't imagine
millions.
Yeah. If you happen to be a viral video or something like that, or if you watch these viral videos, and you want to be viral, all this stuff to get this attention. And I mean, to a certain extent, parents, because of the way the economy is, both of them are working because you just have to. So they're not able to answer these things for the kids. The kids are just inundated with all this stuff. And I think it's increased isolation for so many people, and not just kids. I mean, grown-ups as well. And on top of that, you've got a group of evil people who are in power, running most of the media, most of the big companies, using using the ways of a religion to get these kids to buy their product. And if they end up spending a lot of money to hack themselves, that's okay. They'll get money to the politicians. The politicians will protect the media or protect whoever. And it's like it starts to sound conspiratorial, but I'm like, I don't think it really is. I think this is the kind of shit that's been going on for years. It's just amplified, and it's never been so horrendously permanent. You could stop doing what you were doing, back in the day, but now it's like you hack parts of your body off, you're effed for life.
Yeah. There's no coming back from that. That's one thing that got me from the documentary was the whole, how one of the pediatricians, it was jaw dropping, was saying that she was giving a medication to kids to put puberty on pause. so that you take this drug, you can put puberty on pause, you can figure out what's going on and everything else and blah blah blah, and then you can come off this drug and there's no permanent effects. And then he said basically it's the same drug that they use to chemically castrate sex offenders. And you're thinking, wait a minute, you know, a doctor in charge of children as well is giving these drugs to these kids because that's what they think is best. And again, you kind of, I've always kind of said with any kind of situation that's gone on, somebody's getting rich out of it somewhere. You know, somebody's making money out of it somewhere.
And the thing that really struck me, and I can see this coming a mile away, is this is all happening now to a generation. In 20 years, this is going to be looked upon as it's going to be like what they did with the cigarette companies, you know?
Yeah.
It's going to be horrific when these kids.
I was thinking of Dr. Spock, the child psychologist, who I can't remember what it was now, but it was kind of don't discipline children and let them run free and all this kind of stuff. And I think his own son committed suicide. But then you've got a whole generation of people that are raised without discipline, and so this generation that are told it's perfectly okay to hack yourself to pieces just because you think you're in the wrong body and you've seen somebody else doing it. These are the people that, like I say, the future holds. These are the people that are going to be running the country and everything else in just a few years' time.
I think it's going to snap back differently because reality has a way of mugging you no matter what. It's going to assert itself. And I think what's going to happen, I think it's going to be a lot like what happened with cigarettes, where, you know, all the cancer, everything, you know, backlashed on the cigarette companies pretty hard. Yeah. And it's because they were lying. They were lying about, you know. Now, at some point, I kind of like these activist groups that were going against cigarette companies so far after the fact with these nasty little commercials and everything, didn't do anything any good. After, you know, at this point, it's like, if you take out cigarettes, it's on you. You know? Yeah. And I got no problems with it if that's what you want to do. But when they, you know, for so long you're saying, oh yeah, you know, it's like the Flintstones were advertising cigarettes back in the 60s. It was ridiculous. And so I think that this is going to be the same thing, where it's going to be such a heavy backlash, and it's going to be looked upon as one of the great crimes of humanity that we did on a generation.
That was, again, all for the sake that some people can get rich out of it. Because the people, it is, you know, we live in a society now where the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. There's no denying that. You know, over here in the UK, the prices have gone up of everything. It was only about 5 or 6 years ago, everybody was uproar when we sell petrol by the litre, gas by the litre. And it was kind of, if it went up over £1, everybody was absolutely up in arms about it. It's now knocking on £2. I've seen it at £1.80.
For American viewers, I believe there's about 4 liters in a gallon, which is how we do it. Yeah. So if you're talking £2, it's about £8, and I think the exchange rate would be closer to $9 a gallon here. So that gives you an idea of how bad it is. And you know,
it is. It's crazy. But again, it's the rich people are getting richer off it and the poor people are suffering, but it's kind of, nobody's thinking about what the future will hold, because the rich people don't care. You know, they've got money, so what does it matter? Whereas the poor people are the ones who are struggling with the energy bills and all this kind of stuff. And it's, I mean, I've always thought, not to sort of go back off on a subject, but I always thought it would make an interesting Black Mirror story, how, you know, with like COVID, if something like COVID killed off all the poor people and only the rich people survived, how would the rich people survive without people picking their food and pumping their oil and doing their electric and everything else? And it is kind of, like you say, you know, there's such a delicate balance between the two of how people could die off quite easily and just leave the rich people to prosper.
So getting back to the actual documentary, I was struck by he kept getting back to the central question, what is a woman? And they say, well, somebody who feels like a woman, which is a circular argument, because if you say, what is a woman? It's somebody who feels like a woman. So a woman equals somebody who feels like a woman, so you could just keep putting in somebody who feels like a, somebody who feels like a, somebody who feels like a, somebody who feels, right?
I liked it. I liked it when he asked the question. He said, "What is a woman?" without using the word woman, and the guy was stumped.
They couldn't do it.
Yeah.
These people to me are the dictionary definition when somebody says, "So stupid, only an intellectual could come up with it."
Yeah.
Because I mean, I find it sad that I have to go to Nairobi where they still have witch doctors, and they apparently are smarter than we are.
Yeah. Again, that's what struck me about this program is that there was a great line when they were in Nairobi, and he says to the women there, he says, "What is a woman?" And she just simply says, "A woman can deliver." And that's the basic fundamental of what it is. And yet, in Western culture, he was asking the same question to people randomly on the street: "What is a woman?" Oh, well, there's no art
why are they answering like that? Because they're afraid. Yeah. They're afraid. They know what a woman is.
Again, what came across is a word that was used a lot in the documentary was activists.
Yeah.
And you think about, I can't remember who said this, whether it was Ricky Gervais or I'm sure we were talking about this somewhere else, but these people that have got this gender dysmorphia, I keep saying it wrong, dysphoria, whatever it is, dysphoria, sorry, this genuine illness, they just want to be left alone. They just want to live their lives. That's all they want. They may look very mannish or very womanish and everything else, and I'm sure they get still comments and stuff, but they just want to get on with their lives. And what these activists do is take on the role of, no, we can help. Look, let's all come out and let's do this and and it's just kind of, it's got nothing to do with them. The way people want to live their lives, let them live their lives. Why have activists got to sort of join in and promote these minorities?
When they go into a therapist or a psychologist or whatever, and the psychologist encourages them, like I think Walsh brought up a good point. It's like, there is this where people feel like they need to cut off their own arm because they feel like a one-armed person instead of a two-armed person. It doesn't feel right to be a one-arm. Like, well, that's cuckoo. It's like, then why is it cuckoo to cut off your genitalia?
Yeah.
No, that's perfectly okay. I'm like, this is malpractice, isn't it?
Yeah. It's, again, to me, I thought of Dr. Nick Riviera from The Simpsons.
Yeah.
And when I think they went to Dr. Hibbert and sort of said, that's crazy. Would you do a surgery like that to Dr. Hibbert? And he goes, no. Would you recommend somebody who would? Yes. And like you say, if somebody sort of said, oh, I feel like I only need one leg, can you cut my leg off? Every doctor in the world would say no. And yet, like you say, mutilating your genitals to a point where they're never going to go back to what they normally were, again, like you say, seems perfectly fine. Don't and get to the root problem of what is causing this, of their mental understanding and everything else. And like I say, there are genuine people who genuinely go through this, and it's completely right for them. And I'm not obviously not taking anything away from people like that, but people who just seem to be on a bandwagon of, oh, it's cool to be trans, so I'm going to do it. In years to come, how are they going to regret that? Like you said earlier.
I'm trying to understand why the people in power. This is going to come back to get them. These people who spoke eventually. And it's clear that this kind of, the one Scott, the guy who started the trans, to speak to kids and tell them not to do this because of what he went through. He's talking about how many infections he has all the time. They're talking about teenagers, the
scarring that he had.
They can put them on the puberty blockers, and teenage girls are getting osteoporosis, which they shouldn't be getting until they're in their 80s. And I'm like going, what is the upside of all this? What is the goal? You say, okay, they get more power. I'm like, okay, they're going to get more power, but the cost and the risk. I get that they don't care about people, but
I was going to say the risk isn't to them, though, is it?
Well, eventually there will be a loss of power because people are not going to put up with this. And people are going to really, they're going to get, Disney's going to get hurt in their bottom line. They already are. Netflix is getting rid of the woke people. And I'm trying to figure out, like, is it just complete short-sightedness? Is it just that, or
There was a
is there
there
another
was a
thing at play here?
I was going to say there was a great line in there how it said it was something along the lines of the people kind of need their own self gratification, that they need to be told they're good, whatever it is. And we all think selfishly, we all do it. Obviously, we do try and give of others and everything else, but we all think selfishly. And these people that are making money, for example, and I'm not sort of pointing a finger here, but I mean, obviously over here we've got the NHS, which is a free healthcare system. I broke my foot a couple of years ago. I think I paid for 2 sets of medications, which were about £8 each. Apart from that, I had 3 operations, I had stays in hospital, I had doctor's visits, all that stuff. It was all paid for. But the American healthcare system, I've seen what bills are added up, and they're getting rich off it. And it's kind of somebody, like I say, somewhere is getting rich off it. And if it affects you don't see the poor, so it doesn't affect them that way. All they see is just getting that money in selfishly, and it's just gone to an extreme with some people.
Well, our healthcare system is not a free market system, and it's not a government paid system. It's a government controlled system that is free market, which is the worst of all worlds, and it gives the ability of a Pfizer or somebody like that to, or a lot of these drug and insurance companies especially. I mean, they're able to game the system and really suck a lot of value out of it. If it was a true free market system, because like LASIK is a true free market system, elective surgeries, and they get cheaper and better every year, like almost anything else in a true free market system. So that's a whole different conversation. I don't want to get too far into, but I mean, you're right. There's people that are getting rich off of it, and I'm sure those people, get it. But I look at some of the other, like, some of these news anchors and everything, they're in there for decades, and they're just signing on to this stuff without any. I mean, the laziness that they exhibit, I guess, in reporting news or making these conversations, like those ladies on The View and that kind of stuff. And I mean, it's clear they haven't done even the cursory Google search. It's just like, is it just a religious fervor that it's just overtaken so many people, even the people in power or in the media and that kind of thing?
That's exactly what I think of with the whole situation with social media. Again, I think it was a comedian sort of said 10 years ago, nobody believed the earth was flat. And yet now you have people who will swear blind that the earth is flat and they believe it. And with people on social media, again, there's kind of a joke where it sort of says, you go to the doctors and you sort of say, well, doctor, I have read a paragraph on Google and I've watched 2 YouTube videos, so I'm more of an expert than you. And I think that is kind of like you just said, that the level of depth that people go to prove their argument, there's a stack of paper saying this is wrong, but there's one sheet of paper saying you're right. I'll have that one.
Yeah, but I mean, like, when let me get back to your earth is flat. You're right. There is this weird flat earth society that's spoken up, but they're not sitting at CNN or MSNBC. Those people aren't there. They're not sitting at the heads of corporations, and yet all these people in these kinds of levels of influence and power are buying into this like a religion. And I'm like going, you are so high profile. This is going to bite you. There's no doubt this is going to bite a lot of people. And I'm like going, I just am amazed that, like, you only have to do some cursory common sense thought and realize that this is really damaging, and I don't get it. I don't understand the mindset, I guess. Other than money and power, I get that. But
yeah. I mean, again, like I say, that ultimately, like I say, they're the kind of face of it for whoever might be pulling the strings, and you can talk about the Illuminati or whatever else you want to and whatnot. But I mean, they are the face of it. They're told what to say, and they get paid for it. And it's kind of like, say, I don't think, I mean, actually, ironically, with Matt Stone, I actually thought to myself, he is kind of an independent free thinker who has done his homework and then tried to produce a documentary to show the ludicrousness. Matt Walsh, sorry.
That's
Matt
right.
Stone is from Matt Stone's from South Park. Although they do make good points. But anyway, but yeah, this Matt guy is a free thinker, and he's not part of the huge machine, which is just, I don't think those people care. If they're getting paid, they're going to do it. And like I say, if they suffer a backlash, it's the people at the top who are not, because they're going to be the scapegoats.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think there is some culpability on us. When I say us as a people or as a citizenry, who are not. I mean, you've seen probably more of those man the street where they say, who's the vice president of the United States? They don't know. How many states are in the union? What year did we get our independence? I mean, these are like basic ass questions and they don't know.
Sometimes even I get more right than they do.
Yeah. And and yet we elect guys like that congressman that was on there who ran and turned his tail between his legs as soon as he got any
such a
pushback.
simple question as well.
Yeah. Because he couldn't and that's when it becomes clear is like we are electing people who are just swindlers.
Yeah.
And they are saying they have no moral compass. They have no they just are trying to suck value out of the system. And as soon as they get anything like a hard question that might push back on whatever stupid symbolic bullshit that they're putting on Twitter that makes them look like such a good person, they run away with their tail between their legs. It's like, this is not a person that should have any keys to power. Even if I completely disagree with them, he should be able to say, this is why I believe this. This is where I think is the problem. Used to be people like that, even if I disagreed with them. They're not there anymore.
We've just had local elections down here, and I had a couple of people knock on my door, and I had interesting chats with them. Like I say, I'm not a political person, but it was interesting how a woman knocked on my door, and we were having quite a good chat, and I explained to her my political views and everything else, and she said to me, can I give you a pamphlet? And I said, yeah. And she said, there just should be more women in politics. And I said, no. I said, you've just lost me there. I said, the best person to be a politician is a politician. It doesn't matter their age, gender, sex, race, whatever it is. The best person to do the job is the best person to do the job. And just because somebody is a specific gender or whatever, it really doesn't matter. But unfortunately, both you and I both live in a political society which is run by crooks. I'm going to say, there are people who are making the money off the suffering of others.
Well, I mean, take a look at how are you educating the kids? Well, we've seen libs of TikTok. We've seen some of these teachers. We've seen these curriculums. We've seen that math and even I don't think they even have a civics course anymore. In school, they don't teach you how this stuff works or why it was set up the way it was. If you're going to change something, you need to know why it was set up that way in the first place. And they don't know. So now that you've sent these kids through a school system that doesn't teach them anything, it's very easy to appeal to their immutable characteristics and go tribalism. Then you get everybody fighting each other on these tribes, and
it keeps them busy.
So that's how you end up with somebody saying it's most important to be a woman. It's like, why? You can't even tell me what the fuck a woman is.
Yes, yeah. It's funny you say about TikTok. I saw a video recently about a guy explaining how TikTok is a Chinese-owned company.
It is.
And he said that the algorithms in China for TikTok are dedicated towards things like biology, physics, engineering, and skills. Actual skills. Whereas if you look at the algorithms for what makes people popular in the Western culture, it's for twerking. And he kind of said, if you wanted to bring down a society, then train the youngest to be the dumbest. And, if that is true, I don't know. I've never been on TikTok and never want to go anywhere near it. But if that is true, that the Chinese kids are learning from these people and educating themselves to become better people, whereas people in the Western world are just watching, like I say, guys lip syncing to Justin Bieber or whatever it is, they're learning nothing. And they want to be these people as well to get all the likes and followers and stuff.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I'm like, my brain breaks in half when I watch their behavior. And what I mean is like, they're doing something that they don't want the parents to find out about. They've made that plain. They try to stick it under the radar. They've said that. And then they brazenly talk about it on TikTok. And then when somebody replays them, the Twitter account libs of TikTok replays them, just replays their video and says, this is what they're saying. And they get caught. They get mad at everybody. I'm like, there's no rational. I'm like, how are we losing to these morons? You know,
Yeah.
you're so stupid. You do it. You put it all out there, things that you don't want seen. Why would you do that?
I went out and robbed a bank and then tried to deposit the money that I'd robbed into the bank, into my account, and I got caught.
Did you and I, we talked about Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog. And in that, those of you who haven't seen it, it was a little short, like a 40-minute thing that Joss Whedon did with Neil Patrick Harris and Nathan Fillion.
Before he disappeared.
Yeah, before we found out all about him. But this was during the writer's strike, and so he just wanted to do something. And the whole idea is that Neil Patrick Harris is a supervillain, and he blogs on a video, you know.
Yeah.
And so he says, I'm going to go with my freeze ray or whatever he's going to do, and we're going to take care of this. And then it cuts, and the very next one, he looks like he's pretty messed up. He's like,
he got a black eye in that.
Yeah, I gotta be more careful when I put on this blog, because apparently the police and Captain Hammer watched this. He threw a car at my head. You know, it's like, that's the kind of stupidity. Like that's like a joke. That's like a joke that they did back in 2008. This is what's actually happening. This is reality now. This is how stupid they actually are. And I'm like going, I don't want these people teaching my kids. They don't know the dumbest thing about their own self-preservation.
And that is the problem. I've got a niece who's 12 and she wants to grow up to be a YouTuber. And so with it, I think to myself, she likes maths and she's very good at maths. And I keep saying to her, keep studying maths. Keep. If you one out of every
studying maths, like mass communications.
No, math.
Oh, math. I'm sorry.
But we call it maths, but you for some reason
we drop the S.
Yeah, you drop the S for some reason. But yeah, she's very good at maths or math. But she wants to be a YouTuber, so she's going to learn how to do makeup and that. And I keep thinking, right, for the one person that you're trying to do that, there are literally 100,000 other people trying to. One or two of them will get famous and will make money. You know, a handful of them will, but you won't. But not I've said this to her. Obviously, she's only 12. It's a terrible Christmas at our house. Why is she crying again? I was just telling her about Santa.
Damn it.
But with it, you are a whole generation of kids are thinking to themselves, I'm going to be able to play Fortnite and record it and put it on YouTube and I'll get money from YouTube. And then so they're not studying as hard as they should be at school. So you are, unfortunately, in a generation of idiots.
Yeah, I mean, we don't.
I know that's not all of them, by the way. I know there are still some kids out there that are learning and everything else. But overall,
I told my kids, it's like, don't go to college. It's now a scam. I don't want you going there. And if you are wanting to be a doctor, you want to be a lawyer, you have a very specific goal in mind, and you're willing to do that, then okay. But otherwise, you don't know what you want to do. Don't be wasting your money. It's not as cheap as it used to be, and it's become just these weird propaganda farms where kids come out thinking they need to chop off their stuff.
That got me about the professor in the university that Matt first visited in what is a woman. And I mean, like I say, I'm sorry, if that guy was educating my kids would not be going to that college.
Especially since he can't seem to answer the basic questions.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
He's supposedly an expert in.
And he kept getting angry about it. And again, like I say, I think to myself, if somebody's going to be as spineless at that, forget it.
No, I agree. And I don't know. It's difficult to get a handle on all this, but that documentary was an eye opener. I gave it a 5 out of 5, just as far as, because it's well produced and it certainly is compelling as far as just keeping you engrossed and moving along.
I think I said, I used the expression jaw dropping, how some of the people actually genuinely believe that they are doing the best for their children by giving them literally chemical castrating drugs, and they are in charge of children.
Yeah, and what struck me was the arrogance. It's like, well, we now know that. No, we don't now know these weird things that you're saying. We knew something else for 50,000 years.
Yeah,
you came up with this in the last 10 minutes, and now you act like it's sacrosanct. That's why I call it more of a religion, because they act like somebody came down from on high with the holy tablets that said men or women are interchangeable.
Yeah. Again, it was the woman. Again, I'm sure it was the child pediatric doctor, and he said, so if I went to a farm and I saw a chicken laying an egg, I'd assume that was a female chicken. Well, you can't judge it like that. And it's like, yes, you can. Okay, chickens, there is a male and a female. They have sex and they lay eggs. That's nature.
That comes down to the difference, the people who are in control of their lives and their destiny realize that there is observable reality that they cannot control. It's a weird contradiction. I'm in control of my destiny. I'm in control of the things that happen to me because I understand that there are things that are out of my control. The people who think that their entire lives are out of control thinks that somebody is controlling reality and things happen to them because they say weird things like, I was assigned a gender at birth.
I wonder how long it will be before people start disagreeing with gravity.
I mean, I've disagreed with gravity for years. I've been wanting to fly like Superman, but it just doesn't happen.
But it's going to come to, wasn't it last year or a couple of years ago that people, I don't know if you had it in America, but people over here were eating Tide Pods, which are the small little capsules.
Yeah, we had that.
And dying. And you're just sort of thinking, right, you knew the risks of this, but you were doing it. And I'm sure there are people and eventually going to go, do you know what? Gravity's it's a male construct. Yeah, it's a concept which has been made up and it's not true. And watch me jump off this building. And they're going to learn the hard way. And yet there will still be people out there going, yeah, well, the problem is, and somebody will then try to explain it and prove it right. And it's just, we live in a horrible world where social media is. Yeah, it's an awful thing. It's a terrible thing.
I remember one of Robin Williams' earliest albums. It was called Reality, What a Concept. And that was the joke. It was not supposed to be a blueprint. It was a joke.
Yeah.
And yet that's what they think. They think reality is some sort of concept that can be molded and everything. It's like,
no, it's...
And people are getting hurt. People are genuinely getting hurt.
That's the thing.
They're ruining their lives. In various different ways. They're ruining themselves financially. I just see this all very similar to, Jim Jones serving out the Kool-Aid. And people, I don't know that reference. Jonestown, look it up in the 70s. He served poison Kool-Aid.
Right. Sorry. Right. Yeah, I do know that.
Yeah. Or the Heaven's Gate cult, they all killed themselves because of a comet. It's like, if you I think there's very few people that can actually replace religion in their lives. I've just kind of come to understand that.
I think as well that there is also an issue that is kind of he who shouts loudest is correct. And, like with these activists, that I've read cases of where doctors or not doctors, but professors who have been working in a university for the past 30 years and now lost their job because they used the incorrect pronoun on somebody. And that person has kicked off such a stink that person's lost their job. And it is kind of like I say, we live in a society where, like I say, whoever shouts the loudest is correct.
Well, that's the stoning in Life of Brian. That's what that is.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's funny because I've often referred back to Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, how that was written 1700s, 1800s, whenever it was, but there was that mob mentality of killing the monster, and it was just everybody gets rolled up and goes and kills the monster, and it's because
Salem witch trials, kill the heretic, kill the witch. I mean, it's the same thing. It's the same mentality, and it's sad that we just don't
learn.
We don't. Yeah, I mean, what was it? Twain said, "A history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes." And it's definitely rhyming again with this nonsense, and I'm just. Yeah, I'm grateful that my kids haven't fallen into this. They kind of roll their eyes. I mean, I adopted my kids, and one of them was, they're both part African American. My daughter looks it much more than my son does, but there was no getting away from that reality that they were adopted. I never tried to hide them from any of that reality that it is what it is. That doesn't mean I love them less. It's all a matter of what you do with the cards that you're dealt. Not, and it's done well for them,
Yeah.
And I just look at all these people.
You've never tried to identify as a black man, though, have you? And so your reality is that you are a stepfather to them.
I'm their father, just
Yeah,
adopted.
no, but sorry, adopted. But what I apologize for that.
No,
But
it's
what
all
I'm
right.
saying is your reality is that you are not their father, and yet you have explained that, and because that is the reality, you haven't sort of conned them and told them that, oh, this is what's happened and everything else, and try to make up lies to sort of cover it. The reality is what the reality is. Now, like I say, you could have gone, well, do you know what, actually, yes, I am your father because I identify as it, and everything else. It doesn't make a difference. It's not what the reality is.
No, and it's I objective reality has to be acknowledged, or else you're heading into all this kind of failure. So anyway, I don't want to. I think we've gone over most of it pretty good. But again,
That,
I gave the movie a 5 out of 5.
absolutely. It was
It's
it was it was jaw dropping,
it
and it,
is.
it also made you laugh. It also made you cry, and it got me angry as well. That he goes to a women's lib march and asks the question there, "What is a woman?"
Yeah,
Doesn't get an answer.
yeah, they're holding up signs that says protect women's rights. He says, "What's a woman?" They can't answer. I mean, it's so
It's the
bizarre
fact.
to me.
The fact that got me is that after he had been there for however long, people were all shouting "asshole" at him.
Well, it's this weird. I was observing that. I was like, this is this weird compartmentalization of issues. It's like you got to protect women's rights for abortion and all that, and that has zero to do with trans rights and a woman
Yeah,
can have a penis. And I'm like going, but you can't separate these two.
yeah,
There's this weird, and that's why so much of the left ends up eating its own, because
yeah.
they can't they can't deal with objective reality anymore, and that's, I mean, long term is all going to work out, but short term, I just shudder at all the damage that's going to be caused, and I think that's what that movie showed.
Yeah, it was like I say, it's definitely a recommended watch for anybody, just to have your eyes open. They say ignorance is bliss, but sometimes it's not.
No. So thank you for watching this. We're going to try to do more of these, maybe once a week or so. It's not going to be as often as what we do at Last Movie Outpost. This has been Drunken Yoda Unplugged. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. And this will be more of a political channel. But if you are interested in movies and streaming news and you want to get away from that, and we'll do our best to stay away from that, you can go over to the Last Movie Outpost channel and subscribe there. And then, of course, we have lastmovieoutpost.com, which is our website that does news, and we have news stories going up there every day about the latest things that are coming out of Hollywood. And of course, we come at it from a much more realistic point of view, instead of just the same old shills and political nonsense. You'll never see a rainbow flag on our site.
I'm still waiting for a corporate payout so I can just sell out. But until that time, I'm going to tell the truth.
Yep. That's what we try to do. We try to be as honest and authentic as possible, and hopefully that people will respond to that, because I think that's needed in the entertainment news side as well. But there are times where it's not really appropriate to talk about this kind of thing, so that's why we started up this channel. So I appreciate that you were watching, and George, thank you for being a part of this first one.
No worries.
All right, then we will talk to you on the next one, and again, please like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you on the next video.